Hello and good evening. This is Nishant Saxena welcoming you all to virtual fireside chat on power of active intelligence, transcending collaboration beyond the last mile. The session is powered by Click. Active intelligence provides analytics ready data along with the most updated information in real time. An amalgamation of the data at rest and data in motion can provide the pulse of the situation with deep insights, creating an intelligent data to analytics pipeline. The existing pandemic has proven beyond doubts that the organizations that adopted technology to utilize data for prompt decisions have prospered. Governments which were able to assess public requirements on a real time and take actions have overcome the social and economic impact in a far better way. To take a deep dive on this, we have two very interesting sessions lined up. I request you all to welcome our first guest, Dr. Dinesh Soni, Senior Vice President, Regulatory in National Stock Exchange of India. Dinesh has more than 25 years of experience in development banking, financial markets, supervision, and enforcement. He holds deep knowledge of regulatory and supervisory framework of Indian securities market and has been part of PFRDA's team putting in place regulatory framework for pension fund houses. Dinesh also comes with rich experience as convener, coordinator, contributor to the work of various national level committees, working groups, high-level bodies, forums, and publications of multiple regulators in India. And to moderate the session, we have Mr. Nilesh Kulkarni, Head of Solution Consulting, Click India. Nilesh leads Click's dynamic team of solution consultants responsible for providing innovative solutions to enterprises across multiple industry verticals. A seasoned data and analytics professional with over 18 years of experience, including a decade at Click, Nilesh is instrumental in helping customers build the data and analytics strategy. I request Nilesh to take over and begin the session. Over to you, Nilesh.
Thank you, Nishant and the Economic Times team. Let me start by setting up the context about the active intelligence concept. So active intelligence is a state of continuous intelligence where technology and processes support the triggering of immediate actions from the real-time up-to-date data. It's actually based on real-time up-to-date information, establishes an intelligent data analytics pipeline with dynamic business content and logic, and it's also designed to trigger immediate actions. So let me explain this with the help of an example. I'll take supply chain optimization as an example. A supply chain delivers far more value when managed based on current conditions, combining the sales data, production plan data, demand data, along with the inventory and logistics data, can drive just-in-time decisions, which actually moves along with the market. So that's what the active intelligence is. And I'm here very excited to have Dinesh Soni as our guest. A warm welcome, Dinesh, for this discussion. Hello. And let's begin the discussion by talking about the current scenario where we have seen that in the last 12 to 18 months, we have seen a lot of changes happening. So what are some of the shifts you see within the organizations and in customer demands, Dinesh?
Yeah, so I think for most of us, it has been a very unique situation in terms of the business propositions, what is happening from most of us working from work from home the last around 18 months. And, organizations have obviously changed its course and defined new business processes, new practices. So, coming from the financial sector background, some of financial sector and the banking sector had directly taken a lot of onus and responsibility in terms of running the show continuous basis. So I think banking, financial sector, we were continuously operating. Most of us were operating, from home, but significant part of teams were at offices premises as well. So we had multiple changes in terms of our own requirement for our market intermediaries and all. And the good part has been, there has been a very, very significant increase of the client interest in this period. And we have, the number of increases we have seen of the investors participating in the equity markets has been, I think, record high. this is to do with a lot of technological innovations which have happened in the market in terms of providing the services, in terms of onboarding of the client. Entire this digital framework of Aadhaar, online KYC, and best technology practices which are there in the industry has significantly helped us to cater to this requirement, a very dynamic. While we were kind of, due to this unique situation, while the business tremendously increased, this is perhaps the only industry where we have seen a significant increase during this time. While the economy did have some period wherein we had some type of a lower blip because of the manufacturing and all, but I think this sector did show a significant increase in terms of whether it is participation of investors, overall market movement, and the brokerage's interest and all. So I think yes, it has evolved over time, and technology has definitely helped us to respond in terms of, like, one unique thing which we allowed was that we allowed brokers to operate from the terminals. We allowed brokers to operate from their residences. These are some of the changes we carried out. So I think the technology has definitely helped us to stride over this problem in this period.
Thanks, Dinesh. It is good to see that in last 12 to 18 months, you have seen a lot of interest by investors, and I'm sure that would have generated a lot of interest. And talking of data, I'm reminded of one of the quotes by Edward Deming, which says, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." So it would be interesting to know from you, Dinesh, in terms of what are some of the examples of data being used for decision making in your context or in your organizations. Can you share any example?
Yeah, sure, Nilesh. Yeah, so in Indian context, what has happened is that the regulatory framework is such that exchanges have a significantly regulatory responsibility on them. The securities market framework does empower the exchanges to regulate in multi-form, whether it is supervising the brokers, or it is providing investor services, or it is about the broker-related submissions, or it is other multiple investigation which we carry out. So all this entails data. So what has happened that, with the passage of time, there has been increased participation, the turnover has significantly increased. Yes, without data, I think exchange is perhaps, I think the one of the top, I can definitely bring it to one of the top 5 places in the country in terms of the volume of data which we generate on the daily basis. And without data, all our actions, all our regulatory and supervisory plus enforcement actions are significantly based on data. But one thing we have recently started is in terms of getting massive amount of client level data directly from the brokers. So this is something we started off recent past. Like last year, we are getting on a daily basis of a client which are there with the broker. So when you have such a massive amount of data which is coming on a daily basis, obviously it requires analysis, it requires outcomes, and it requires a swift action. So I think we have been in position to, we have taken significant steps in terms of identification of the risk at a much early stage. So data integration and data analysis has significantly one of a very, very major aspect of the exchange, which without that, the regulatory actions and the enforcement actions which we do will be, seriously impaired. So I think our exchange and data go hand in hand. It's a very, very significant part of what work exchange does.
Right. That's really interesting to know, and that's quite a humongous data that you're talking about. You being one of the top stock exchange, not just in India but worldwide, and that must be generating quite a lot of data. And you would really need good solutions to understand, make value out of that data. And that brings me to the topic of the data literacy. And what I mean by that data literacy is the ability to read, work with, analyze, and communicate with the data. Solutions like Click also enable the ability to free data, find it, analyze, and take the informed action. So if we look at today, data literacy is an important skill, as important as reading or writing skill that we would have. And some of the outcomes of that data literate world that we can expect is quicker insights, better decisions, staying competitive, or fostering the employee engagement as they may feel part of the decision making process. So, how do you see the data literacy at your organizations? Can you also talk about some of the approaches which you're using to drive the data-driven culture, given that you have such a humongous data within the organization?
Yes. So I think, like I mentioned before, data is something very significantly, which is a dynamic data which keeps on coming on a daily, weekly basis. Where the trade data we generate on a daily basis, reporting we have again on daily basis, but which is reported on a weekly cycle. So how we have done the changes in recent past, Nilesh, is that we have data aligned in different systems, right? So we have on one hand we have a trading data, on one hand we have a brokers reporting to us, and then one hand we have say data from we generate from general market sources in terms of what are the actions being taken against a particular entity by say other regulator, by SEBI. So what we have tried to do is we have tried to consolidate different sources, and we have tried to empower our teams in terms of when we say of data literacy, we have empowered the team members in terms of getting data on their table, providing them a interactive dashboards wherein you have all the factors which are important for the decision making which are coming. So some of the tools like Click, adopting the Click, what has helped us is that we bringing all the alerts which we generate for a particular particular say set of stakeholder, and then we accordingly take regulatory action. So that has helped us in taking some of the swift and early decisions. And not only that, one thing which we have definitely gathered during this period is that once we empower the team members, so it's about some of the tools which are there, they are so dynamic, and say a set of 100 people are using the tool, and you have data available to them, and they can cut and slice the data based on their requirement. That is some of the unique features which we really found in Click to be really helpful to us, and by creating their own interactive dashboards. So we have nudged people to use some of the tools which we have recently acquired. We have empowered them. We have empowered them to learn and to identify the trends, because identification of trends by use of statistical tools is also very, very important. It's not only about data, but what is the trend data is showing, what are the risk factors, because ultimately for regulatory purpose, it is the early identification of the risk. So we have done is that we have had a multiple training programs. We have handled the juniors coming into the system, and we have tried to expose them into the various aspects of the data which are there, so that they become a part of the solution making in terms of they are empowered enough to be part of the decision making, so that we take timely actions, and early detection is the key.
Thanks for that. And given the humongous data, and as you mentioned, having the early detection is the key. Really, all the users or all the business users need to have the capability where they can really access the data, identify those trends, so that you can take the action properly. And that also reminds me one of the quote again from Edward Deming, which says that if you do not know how to ask the right question, I think you discover nothing. So in your case, it's important to ask the right questions of the data, so that then you can detect those early warning things, so that you can take the appropriate actions before the things happen. And I also understand that you've been using some of these solutions like Click as a part of your data transformation journey. While some of these things can be in the initial stages, I would also like to hear and keen about how you see that journey, and how do you see that these type of solutions can help you in future in addressing your requirements.
So what uniquely I did observe from the tools which are available, whether it is Click or some of the other BI tools which are there, what unique aspect about this, as they have their own their own analytical engines, which throw out certain outliers, which throw out certain outliers which may be of interest to us. So when we build in certain principles and we feed into those analytical engines, the associative engines, which are provided by these tools like Click. So we don't have to do it. It's not about drawing a software or doing something, running a query. They're not query based tools. They are automatically, certain outliers are generated which help us in decision process. One is that. Then one significant different thing which I observed is there are certain insights what you generate. So we have, say, assumingly you have provided this entire data lake and the platform to 100 set of people. So all 100 people will look at that in a different manner. Once they look at a different manner and they have ability to play around with the data. So what we have observed is that some of the team members, who are obviously, everyone's capability would not be same, but some people who can look at the data in different manner. So one person or set of people looking at it in an altogether different, innovative manner helps others to take benefit of that. So this is a difference between the strategy wherein the data is coming, wherein there's a very structured analysis. So this is kind of, I would say, very unstructured and innovative and uncharted territory where you have data available, a mountain of data on a different systems, and you have placed it and then 100 minds work on it in a different manner. So when they think differently, when they dovetail their thoughts, and when they involve in the decision making, that I think throws a very interesting alert. This is something at a very short span. It has not been much when we have adopted this tool, but this is in the short journey, whatever we have done. I think this is something, a learning and something which we have, insights which we have got out of this.
Thanks for sharing those insights, Dinesh. And I hope you would be able to explore the data well to get the decisions appropriately using the data. And this also brings me to the earlier topic that we were talking about in terms of the data-driven culture, or the data culture as we may want to call it. So what do you think are some of the important factors in driving this data culture within the organizations? Do you think it's the data literate employees, or the leadership support, the right data strategy, or a combination of these, or something else? So what are your views on that?
No, so I think all the factors which you mentioned, whether it is data literate employees or the leadership push or adopting the latest technology, I think all of it have a very, very significant contribution to play around. Let us assume that leadership is there, which has provided a tool, but the teams are not empowered, or a team are adequately trained, or they're not literate enough to use such tools. Then the investment in the tools which will not yield the desired results. At the same time, when team is, say, data literate, but you have to, because of the reason that daily we churn out so massive amount of data at most of the organizations across financial sector, manufacturing or services. I think everybody is generating humongous amount of data. So while we talk of AI, ML and all, but I think it's definitely, there are certain steps to reach that level. You cannot reach directly AI and ML, right? Sometimes what I definitely have observed is that, like, a simple visualization of the data which is there, and a dynamic visualization which is in associative form, and churns out the output in a quick manner, is maybe much important than say AI. So it would depend on what is the usage and what is the requirement you are doing. So at everywhere you may not require AI ML. Somewhere you simply want visualizations to happen in a proper manner. And some of these tools, they are very interactive, and they help us to generate multiple visualizations. Say suppose there are 10 set of people. They will visualize the data in a different manner. Ultimately, the best visualization which is most useful for the entire team is obviously identified. So I think there are these factors. All the factors are very critical. Whether it is the data literate people, or it is the leadership, or having the latest tool, all the factors have contributing their own manner. Leadership has to lead from front. Leadership has to empower. Leadership has to provide the latest technology, do that kind of budgeting, provide for that, space, and also handle the, team members. Team members have to be obviously be a little quick learner, ready to accept new technologies. It is, our past way, say someone who has expertise in a particular system or a particular previous technologies, which are, not have changed over the time. So people also have to be kind of open to learning new things and shift to the new ways of doing analysis and all, because some of these tools are providing the output which are very different from which are not existing previously. So it's about organizations relearning about their approaches towards the data. But one thing is for sure, which I think all of us have been, like you mentioned, you quoted some of the very nice quotes. So I think data is extremely important in terms of taking a dynamic decision, which is whether it is for expanding the business or it is for institutions like us, wherein we are dependent on data, timely data generation for taking regulatory actions.
And thanks for sharing your views, Dinesh. And as you said, I think it is extremely important to have the leadership support so that it drives from the top, so that everybody starts using the data for decision making rather than making it the gut feel. And what we've also observed is the more the people are data literate within the organization, they start using the data in much better way, which helps take the decision in a better way, which helps the organization in an immense way. And they also feel empowered in a way that they are part of the decision making process. Obviously, that decision making the importance or impact of that decision making can vary at different levels, because a decision that a CEO takes might have a larger impact than a decision an operational level employee takes. But nevertheless, making those decisions is important for each and every level within the organizations. Data holds the key for some of all of these decision making. And I also like one of the points that you brought in terms of the AI ML. Before we really talk about the AI ML, I think it is important to have the data in place to ensure that in the maturity curve, we start by having the descriptive and diagnostic analysis, where we understand the data through insights out of that data. And then as maturity grows, we can apply those advanced analytical algorithms to get the next level of forecasting or predictive kind of scenarios there. And it's a maturity that an organization goes through from the data journey perspective.
Right.
So thanks for sharing your views on that. And I would also like to conclude by asking you one more question in terms of given that you have such humongous experience of working with data, the data that you generate, and in your journey of data, what is the one piece of practical advice that you would like to give to the organizations who would be probably starting their journey of data and analytics?
So the important input which I feel is very important for any organization which is starting is that start with the smaller target. So start with smaller target, empower your teams, and training of team members is very much essential. So sometimes the task seems to be very enormous, but I think we should divide it into the smaller aspect, and we should achieve some of the smaller things. So that helps the team to get motivated, and go further steps. That is, I think, one important aspect. Another important aspect which for the organizations which are starting this journey is, I think, there is a lot of the good part is what I have experienced in my team is that you don't need computer science graduates or data scientists, because these tools, some of the tools which are available, within these tools there is a lot of automated things which are there which generate insights for you. So any non-technical person sometimes we get very overawed with the technology, and whether the non-technical people can do that. So I think in any non-technical person with a reasonable amount of good learning abilities and a basic logic can adopt the new technologies like Click and all which are available into the market. And we should start small, and with the passage of time, I think we can progress in the journey towards using data for the benefit of the organization.
Right, great. Thanks a lot, Dinesh, for sharing your views. It was an interesting conversation. Let me summarize some of the points that you talked about, which I found really interesting. When you start by talking about some of the shifts that you're talking about, you talked about seeing a lot of tremendous activity from investors and participants, which is generating a humongous data, and how it is important to use that data for early warnings and decision making in your organizations, and why it is important to have business users more data literate so that they can take the appropriate decisions. And one interesting piece that I found is you mentioned about unlearning some of these things when it comes to data, and try to look at it in a different perspective to get the views. And having the leadership support is an important aspect to have the important to drive the data-driven culture within your organizations. And obviously the gold nuggets that you talked about, the advice for the other organizations of starting small, ensuring that you make it success, and then build on incrementally on top of that success. So that was really very sound advice, so based on your experience. So thanks a lot for sharing your views, Dinesh. Thanks a lot. So back to you, Nishant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilesh. That was a very interesting and insightful conversation. And I'm sure the next session is going to be equally engaging. Moving on, for our next conversation, I would like to welcome Krishna Khan, also referred to as KK by his colleagues and friends. KK is an IT professional with over 2 decades of experience in leading technology in the financial services space, largely by Indian private insurance enterprises. Currently, he works as head IT with Momentum Metropolitan Services, the foreign JV partner in Aditya Birla Health Insurance, or ABHI. He carries the accountability of bringing MMI's digital solutions at ABHI. As the program director of one such mega initiative at ABHI, a digital transformation program spanning 2 years, he has been instrumental in laying down and implementing the technology blueprint for the enterprise to be digital ready and nimble. This tech blueprint includes cloud migration, API integration ready, and real-time analytics enabled. Once again, I request Nilesh to take this session ahead and keep helping us learn about active intelligence. Over to you, Nilesh.
Thanks, Nishant, and thanks Economic Times to set this platform for us, and a warm welcome, KK. It's really nice to have you, and looking forward to an interesting conversation ahead. So I would like to start this conversation by setting up the context around our theme, active intelligence. So active intelligence is a state of continuous intelligence where technology and processes support the triggering of immediate actions from real-time up-to-date data. And it's based on real-time up-to-date information, and it establishes an intelligent data analytics pipeline with the dynamic business content and logic that we want to implement. And it's designed to trigger immediate action. So let me try to explain that with the help of an example within the supply chain optimization. So a supply chain delivers far more value when it's managed based on the current conditions, right? By combining the latest sales, the production planning and demand data, along with the inventory and the supply side logistic data, it can actually drive just-in-time decisions, which can move with the market and create the impact for the business perspective. So that's more on the active intelligence. And I'm also reminded by a quote called data is new oil, and the addition to that is analytics is the combustion engine. So with that, I would like to ask KK about starting about what his role, what his team does at his organization.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Economic Times. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. So thanks for having me here. I'll start with a brief introduction about myself. So I am part of Momentum Metropolitan, the foreign JV partner in Aditya Birla Health. And I am accountable for driving wellness for Aditya Birla Health customers, ABHI as we call it, ABHI customers through the digital systems. Over the past 20 odd months, I have been driving a transformation program at ABHI, basically using technology to give ABHI a competitive edge in its internal and external operations and make it a truly digital enterprise. We started off by a core system replacement project, but it afforded us an opportunity to look at the technology blueprint and really drive a larger transformation program. One that included migration of the IT ecosystem to the cloud, integrations revamp, the adoption of a microservices-based architecture, and the real-time analytics capability, the topic of our discussion today. All these were the hallmarks of a digital transformation program that we have taken up at ABHI. That is the thing that I have been doing over the last 2 years.
Great. Thanks. Okay, that's truly a driving a digital transformation journey within the organization. So with that, KK, I would like to start by asking you, can you highlight some of the data and analytics initiatives at your organizations?
Sure. So as a background, I think ABHI is already a mature data-driven organization. A large part of the business of ABHI comes from online integrations with channel partners such as banks and brokers. And this digital data is readily available and traverses through all of our systems. A framework of a centralized operational data store that draws data from all these disparate systems and mashes it together, then serving it up through data marts, is a vision that the ABHI leadership had taken right from the inception. So that operational data store is really the nerve center of our data. There is also additionally a dedicated core team that is focused on harnessing analytics capabilities and primarily focuses on analytics for steering sales and for risk containment. In the third year of operation, when there was a substantial amount of data available, this team has now also forayed into the data lake towards getting customer profiling done and trying to derive better insights that can help us engage better with the customers. So truly ABHI has embedded analytics as a core part of its organization.
Great, thanks. And nice to know that, KK. You also talked about that ABHI being relatively mature from the data and analytics perspective. So what roadmap you see from the data transformation perspective, and where do you think you have reached? Have you reached almost where you wanted to be, or how do you see that roadmap for you?
So we must take a step back and dwell upon what it was before this transformation began. So while the transformation is only 20 months old, before that, the framework of the centralized operational data store was put in place. But the analytics team faced two constraints. One was a constraint of compute. Whenever they would have to run massive cycles for doing another round of analytics, there would be a compute constraint on the available compute power. And the second was the impassivity that was imposed upon them by the once-a-day batch jobs. The batch job that would fetch data from various systems and churn all the data together. In the current transformation, we have attempted to overcome both of these. Primarily, 3 steps were taken. 1, we focused on standardization of data structures and definitions, considering that we were putting in place a new core system. 2, the entire data warehouse has been migrated to the cloud and is expected to bring in the power of the cloud computing to scale and to drive whenever there are large data loads to be undertaken. And 3, the CDC tool, in our case, Clicks Replicate, has been put in place to try and furnish real-time information so that when we are able to draw analytics and insights, we should be able to get real-time data and enable faster decision making for the business. So I think with all of these, we have actually taken the first steps and put in the building blocks for enabling the business now to keep drawing upon it and running faster.
Great. So those were the building blocks which you put in to ensure that the data is analytics ready, or we may probably want to call it as more of a business ready from the analytics perspective. So I want to talk a little bit about the next step, more from the data literacy perspective in terms of how the organizations can make use of the data. I also wanted to talk a little bit about what data literacy is and understand your views on it. So for us, data literacy is the ability to read, work with, analyze, and communicate with the data. And solutions like Click also enable the ability to free the data, find it, analyze, and take the informed action based on that data. And data literacy is also becoming as important skill as reading or writing skill that we have in our day-to-day lives. And some of the outcomes that we get out of this data literate world are the quicker insights, better decisions, staying competitive, fostering the employee engagement, etc. So I also wanted to understand from your perspective in terms of what do you think would be some of the important factors in driving the data-driven culture within the organizations? Would that be for leadership support, the data literate employees, the right data strategy as you were talking about earlier, or a combination of these things? So please feel free to give your views in terms of what drives the data-driven culture within the organization.
Sure. So let me break that into 3 parts. Like you rightly said, the focus and appreciation of data is very much there amongst employees. But if I can look at the 3 distinct sections of our employees, one is the sales force. So with digital selling having become the norm over the past year or so for the industry and definitely for our competition, increasingly the need to gain an edge by leveraging upon customer data, insights that are gleaned from the data, personas, how better we can sell, all of these is even more acute now. So from a sales employee perspective, the ability to ensure that the transaction goes to fulfillment faster is most important. From a back office perspective, I think the COVID crisis imposed work from home and remote collaboration upon a back office that was otherwise accustomed to working from a central hub. Now it has therefore brought to fore the need for more real-time information, both on technology and process bottlenecks, and also to get faster corrective action, because a customer lost is lost forever. So it is very much imperative that these back office teams that were earlier accustomed to working off day-end reports now get more and more real-time MIS, and they are really hungry for that kind of MIS. And lastly, the leadership. Without the leadership sponsorship, there is no possibility that technology teams can support these kind of demands. So the leadership sponsorship has always been there, like I mentioned, in terms of driving a centralized data hub, driving analytics capabilities within the organization. But now with more real-time and up-to-date data and our ability to draw upon various insights and serve it at the hyper-contextual scale, I think we should be able to see the leadership providing us more support and deriving more business value out of this entire initiative. So I think that is the way forward for us as an enterprise.
Thanks, KK. I think it's more what I understand from your responses. It's more about having the real-time data available and the leadership support in order to ensure that we have more data-driven culture within the organization to take the appropriate decisions. So going back to one of the topics that you talked earlier, that some of the applications that you have, which have been deployed in cloud. So how important do you feel the cloud journey or the SaaS journey during your data transformation phases?
So when you are trying to start a proof of concept, or when you are trying to get the organization to buy into a new technology, it is very important to demonstrate the win and then go ahead and scale up. And increasingly, our forays into newer technologies or into newer initiatives are designed along these lines.
Mhm.
I think the cloud and the availability of platforms in a SaaS model liberate us from trying to build a business case and trying to invest or put heavy upfront investments. They allow us to build a proof of concept, demonstrate the value, and then start scaling that concept up to enterprise level. In our case, we have had our multiple such iterations on rule engines or even on the data lake that I spoke about, where we started off small, and only after the concept of some of those transactions or some of those customer journeys were fulfilled through the platform, that we really went ahead and scaled up. So I think the cloud has been a great enabler for organizations, and especially in these kind of areas where it is a new foray and uncertain future.
Thanks. I think it has really been an enabler, as you said, in your context as well, liberating you from maintaining that hardware and enabling you to experiment a lot of things as a proof of concept before you really go on to the enterprise scale there. Right? And that's how cloud and SaaS has been really important as a part of your data transformation journey. Yeah, nice to hear about that.
Sure.
With
I must
the-
add, sorry, Nilesh, I must add,
Yeah.
I think the ABHI has been experiencing phenomenal growth. We have been growing and the fastest growing standalone health insurer in India. And we have been growing very rapidly. So you can imagine the amount of investments that we were making in our on-prem hardware earlier. So the cloud definitely acts as an enabler to support our growth as well.
That's really tremendous, considering the growth that you're going through and how you are really using these technologies to enable and catch up with that growth, or enable that growth, if I can say in that way.
Sure.
Right. So I would also like to ask you one question, given your experience, given the maturity that you have, and given your experience of running huge transformation projects across the organization, what is the one piece of advice or the practical advice that you would like to give to the organizations who are not so mature and just starting their journey into the data and analytics space?
I think it is important as a first step. It is important to start with a small target. Data and analytics is a vast area, and it is easy to lose your way if you were to start with a grand program and then try to cater to fulfilling everybody's demands because you have the data available at your disposal. It is probably important to start with a small target, define a problem, the right problem to address, and set up a framework for it. While setting up the framework, one can definitely build as per a blueprint, but very important that the framework first caters to the target that you set out to do. The next step would be to focus on ensuring that you have the right enablers. So the right executive sponsorship, the right frameworks or the tools, the availability of data from where you will be drawing these insights and analytics, and finally, the team with the right domain and expertise. I think these are the 4-5 key elements that one needs to have in order to ensure that the journey is well on its way. And then you have to demonstrate success. Demonstrate success with the first small target that you got, and thereafter quickly set up the next goal. I think this kind of a process where you are able to build upon your past successes and keep increasing the scope of the project will ensure that the analytics journey will be a success.
Great. I think that is a very good piece of advice. Thanks a lot, KK, for sharing all your views. It was really a nice and interesting conversation. Let me try to summarize some of your thoughts, what we discussed on various topics. You definitely mentioned that the data and analytics journey is quite mature when you started, and how you started actually by trying to have those building blocks in place by having the real-time data from various sources, making that data analytics or business ready so that the data literate organizations can make use of that data for the analytics purpose. You also mentioned about having the importance of cloud in the journey, which can help you experiment a lot of things, liberate you from maintaining the hardware, to build a proof of concepts quickly and scale it to the enterprise-wide once you see that success in those proof of concepts. And obviously, having the leadership support in place along with the real-time updated data to ensure that you drive the data-driven culture within the organizations. And obviously, the golden pieces of nuggets in terms of the advice for the organizations, in terms of starting the small, identifying the right problem, building the right framework, and showing the success quickly, so that then you can move on and mature into your journey of the analytics. Those were some of the interesting thoughts that you shared, KK. Thanks a lot for your views, and it was really nice having you on this forum, KK. So back to you, Nishant.